Okay, the purpose for this video is to show you how to install a medium-sized decal onto a textured surface. This technique can be used on any surface, but textured is a little harder, and so I'm picking that just to show you some of the things that might come up if you try that. First of all, you want to clean the surface, and you want to clean the surface with a non-ammonia based cleaner. Windex has ammonia in it. You should always not clean it with Windex because Windex is a good cleaner, but the ammonia will attack the adhesive on the decal. I use Sprayway. This is just one brand. You could use alcohol or anything that doesn't have ammonia in it and you should be okay. In this particular case, I did not clean it only because I'm hoping that I'll run into some issues by not cleaning it, so I can show you how to deal with those issues in case the decal is not sticking well. Also, just to make it go a little faster, I applied this guideline tape at the top, and then once I got the decal in position, I put this vertical one in place just to hold it in place. This takes a little bit of time to do to make sure you have it exactly where you want it. So I didn't want to waste your time with the video doing that, but that's the reason why I have this vertical and horizontal piece of tape. This vertical one is there because I'm going to use what's called the hinge method to apply the decal. So anyways, let's go on with the decal installation. So once you have the decal here, sometimes the transfer, this plastic sheet that's on top, the transfer sheet, if it's been stored for a long time, may want to release the decal and not pick it up. So before you start, pull with a squeegee or some plastic thing like maybe a credit card, pressing down a little bit, pull to make sure it's actually sticking to the transfer sheet. That way when you lift it off the paper, it sticks to the transfer sheet, doesn't stay behind. And you should pull in all different directions. In this particular one, I know it's fairly a fresh sticker, so I'm not going to do this too much, but that's the idea. By the way, you don't want to push, because if you push, the edge of the card or whatever you're using can get underneath the decal and start to lift it up and maybe hurt the decal. So always use a pulling motion to be safe. Okay, and do that all for the entire decal. Now, we're going to use the hinge method, so I'm going to slowly and carefully peel back the decal and making sure that the decal is coming off onto the transfer sheet, which it is in this case. If it wasn't, I would back up and I would press whatever area is not coming up to make sure it comes up. And once it's all the way off like this, typically this is going to stay, it looks like, but sometimes if it doesn't want to stay, just use a piece of tape to hold it in place so that you can have both hands to work with. And then cut away the paper. We don't need this piece of paper anymore. Now, I'm going to bring this back over, but I'm not going to let it touch the surface, because once it touches, it's going to stick. So holding it away from the surface, I'm going to use my card. I'm going to slowly, not with a lot of force, just slowly let the card do the work, so that way I can push out any possible air that's there. We're going to push down harder later, but first we're doing it nice and easy. That's why I'm able to push. I'm not pushing hard. I'm just making sure that the card is doing the work and the air is completely out of there. Okay, and there we are, one half is done. Now that this one half is done, I no longer need this support piece in the middle, so I'm going to remove that. There we go. And then I'm going to repeat by folding with the remaining side over and then carefully peeling it away. Again, making sure that nothing is sticking to the paper. If it does, I would back up and fix that issue. But here we go. This came off nice and easy and clean. I'm going to again hold it away from the surface, and then using my applicator, squeegee, credit card, whatever it is, slowly work the decal onto the surface, letting the squeegee do the work. I don't want any air bubbles, and if a little bit air bubbles gets in there, not a big deal. Vinyl is actually porous and small air bubbles will escape over time, so better not to pop them if you do have some. But if you use this technique, you shouldn't get any air bubbles, and if you get a few small ones, don't sweat it. Okay, now that it's on there, now I'm going to press a little harder, and I don't want to push if I'm going to press a little harder, so I'm going to use the pull method. And what I'm doing now is just making sure that the sticker is actually adhering. And it's best if you work it from the middle out. See, from the middle out like this. That way if something starts to bunch up, you don't have a problem. Just always try to work it from the middle out as much as you can. Sometimes you'll find yourself doing exactly the wrong thing and going from one end to the other, but try to avoid that as much as you can. Pull in different directions, get it to be on there. Okay, now that we have it on there, we're going to remove the transfer sheet. To remove the transfer sheet, start on one edge, fold it back 180 degrees on itself and slowly start to peel back, making sure that the sticker is sticking behind. In this case, I don't know if you can see it or not, but the eye, the little dot is sticking to the transfer sheet and not to the surface. So I'm going to back up. I can push down with my finger many times. If not, I can use the tool, or I can use a credit card or a squeegee or whatever I happen to have. Fold it down nice and hard, and again, slowly roll it away like this. And it looks like this other one's doing the same thing. And again, it's because I didn't clean the surface, but I wanted this to happen so I could show you how to deal with it. Every one of the little the dots on the eyes are not wanting to release, but as I do this, they're releasing just fine. You see a little bit happening here now, and I'm going to continue to rub down. And in this case, I'm being able to do all this with my finger. Every piece that doesn't want to release, I just push down and go slow. Okay. Textured surfaces will do this to you, so be aware of that. And go slow and make sure that it all releases. Now I'm going to speed up the video so you don't have to watch me do this the whole way, but just remember, all I'm doing is every piece that doesn't want to release, I'm going back and fixing that problem by pushing it back down with my finger until it does release. And I'm keeping this transfer sheet very flat, folded back on itself. And once I get to a where one side is completely off, I'm going to kind of rock it back and forth. But this decal is a tough one because it's got a lot of small details to it, and I've purposely chosen to stick it to a non-cleaned textured surface just so I can show you the problems that you'll have if you try to do a surface that has a little bit of wax on it or something, or didn't get cleaned well. The one thing you don't want to do is use Windex. If you use Windex, adhesive will destroy itself, and so you want to make sure that you don't use Windex. Okay, let me just continue on with this and we'll get back to you in just a second here. Okay, I want to slow the video down one more time here just to show you one other thing you can do to help you out. In this case, I have a letter that doesn't want to stick even when I rub it down, but there's a small edge that's showing up. So as it does that, I can use my finger and hold the letter down as I pull away, as I pull the transfer sheet away, and that will release it. There it is, I released it just fine now. Okay, back to normal speed as we're coming to the end here. I want to make a couple more comments here. You saw me cut away the transfer sheet a couple of times. It just makes it easier for you to be able to see what you're doing, and also in areas where it doesn't want to release, you really want to fold it down on itself like this and push down. Just a little bit of a curl, and that can make it a little harder. Also, you know, how could we have avoided having to do all this with going real slow like this? Well, one is don't use Windex on the surface. Secondly, I can send these decals out with a less aggressive transfer sheet that's used for textured surfaces. So if I know that you're going to be putting it on this kind of surface, I'm going to send you a different kind of a transfer sheet. So go ahead and tell me that in the comments before you purchase. Let me know you're dealing with a textured surface that's going to have a hard time releasing. The only thing, there's also always pros and cons. The con is that when you go to remove the decal from the backing paper, sometimes the transfer sheet that's not as aggressive will have a tendency to not want to lift the decal off, and so in that case you'll want to really rub it down, you know, before you pull it off. Or you can lay the adhesive or the vinyl decal upside down on the table and pull it off where you're pulling the paper away instead of the decal away. That also helps quite a bit. But you saw in every case I'm able to back up. Even in cases where the letter completely lifted, it was okay because the transfer sheet holds everything in the right position. So all I have to do is, if I roll back I can get it back into the right spot there, and every letter ends up in the correct place, as you can see has happened here. Just as a summary, clean with non-ammonia based cleaners. Position it for you where you want it to go. Really rub it down well. Start to take the transfer sheet off by folding it back on itself, you know, 90 degrees, meaning you're going to completely fold it back on itself, and then put your fingers right against where it's going to be rolling off and slowly pull away. And then everywhere where you see where a letter is not releasing, back up and fix that by just rubbing it down. You saw I did it mostly with my finger. And then if you can use a knife or whatever to cut away the excess transfer sheet as you're going. By the way, the squeegees and these nice knives are all available on the website. The difference between this and your typical knife is that this is a very steep angle, so that you can go in if you need to and pick something or cut something very precisely. Standard utility knife has a much shallower angle. It doesn't work as well. But there you have it, complete decal. Remember, let me know if you're doing a textured surface, as is on some of these safes. This happens to be a textured surface on this safe, and I will send you a less aggressive transfer sheet, and then just follow the instructions and you should have a beautiful decal. Thank you. Okay, we're back, and through the magic of video editing, what I've done is I've actually removed the decal that was here that we just installed a second ago. This time I'm going to show you the difference between using a lighter tack transfer sheet and also cleaning the surface. This is the exact same surface. What I've done is, after I removed the decal, I used this cleaner. This is spray away glass cleaner to clean the surface. You could use soap and water, alcohol, anything that doesn't have ammonia, and I can't stress that enough. You really should not use a cleaner with ammonia, because ammonia really does affect the performance of the adhesive. Now, as I mentioned, there's pluses and minuses to using the lower tack transfer sheet. This transfer sheet, notice, it's paper. The other one was plastic. The reason it's paper is because the lower tack plastic sometimes contracts and expands at a different rate than the actual decal, and it can release a lot easier than this one. And I wanted to have a little bit more integrity, so I used paper in this case here. However, it's not as tacky as the previous one, and so sometimes after it's sat for a while, it may actually start to release the decal underneath. So to start with, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to really press down. The paper's still underneath there, but I'm really pressing down and pulling to make sure that this decal is actually connected to the transfer sheet well. As I mentioned, even though it's shipped with them very well attached to the transfer sheet, over time they release. After all, that is the job of the transfer sheet, is to grab onto the decal, but it also needs to release. So over time it will release. So all I'm doing here is making sure that it's well on there. Notice I'm always pulling, and I'm using this squeegee here. You can use a credit card. We have these on the website also. The nice thing with this one also is that it has a felt end on it, so that when I go later on, when I go to actually push this onto this textured surface, this felt will actually help me. You'll see that in a second. Okay, no different than before. I'm going to slowly peel away the transfer sheet and make sure that the decal comes with it, and if it doesn't, I'm going to back up, and I'm going to use this to push down whatever doesn't come up. In this case, it's coming up because I took that extra step right before this to push it all the way down, and you notice it's coming up nice and clean. Okay, once that's out of the way, I'm going to use a little bit of a tape just to hold it out of the way, so that I can cut away the paper that I no longer need. There we go. Paper's cut away. Same process as before. You just notice we have a different transfer sheet is all. I'm going to use this. I'm actually going to use the felt side now, and slowly let the squeegee do the work. I'm going to let this transfer onto the surface. One disadvantage of the paper is you don't see the decal as easy as you do obviously with the clear one, but it's okay because we saw where it was at and we placed it exactly where we wanted to. Okay, that's on there. Now I can remove this center piece of tape that's acts as a hinge for us. Get that out of the way and do the same thing here. I'm going to very gently remove the paper, and notice I'm pulling the backing away from the decal as much as I can because that helps it release easier. Okay, once that's out of the way, I'm not going to let it touch the surface till I'm ready to let the squeegee do the work. The squeegee with the felt side is now doing the work. I'm pulling the paper, I'm pushing the paper actually onto its position here. The felt also prevents me from catching an edge, so that's kind of nice. Okay, that's all the way on there. Now that it's on there, I'm going to press a little harder, and I'm going to get that really on there. You can start to see the decal through the paper even as I press a little harder. And I'm going to pull in multiple directions, not just in one direction. So I'm going to pull down here, I'm going to pull up here. And what I'm doing is I'm really making sure that that decal is pressed up against the surface, which I cleaned without ammonia base cleaner. And I'm pressing down with a felt piece, which allows me to do things like even pushing like this. It won't catch. The felt really does help. Okay, and once that's on there, nice. You really can't overdo this, because the more you do this, the more you're activating the adhesive that's underneath there. That should be enough though. Now the same process, we start the paper, again folding it back on itself, and slowly remove the paper, and you notice how much easier it's actually releasing. I'm not having to go back and do anything this time. And the difference here is the paper is a lower tack, and I cleaned the surface. The previous trial, I purposely did not clean the surface, and if you did clean the surface and happen to use ammonia, it would be even worse. But you notice I'm really not having to do much to get this thing to transfer onto there. Look at how cleanly it's coming off. If for some reason it started to peel up, just like the other transfer paper, you would go back and just reverse your process and push that on that spot. But look how much faster this is going, and everything is coming off perfectly clean. There we go, and it's done, just like that. You take this off, and there's our new decal. Now this, over a period of a few hours, is going to activate. The adhesive is going to activate and become very, very attached to the surface here, so you don't have to worry about it peeling off. Give it an hour or two and it should be pretty much permanent. Permanent in meaning that if you go to pull it off, you'll actually destroy the decal. It will come off, but it's not going to just fall off. You're going to have to pick it off if you really want it to have it come off. And there you have it.